Greetings and welcome to Lamarok's Lair. Tonight I'd like to show you a new garden area, new this year, that sits between our humble abode here and my mother's house up on this hill. This area was just lawn except for I think 3 trees that I had planted in here a few years ago. But the plan is to convert this area into a so-called food forest. I will refer you to James Prigione's YouTube channel. He has a wonderful, actually a couple different food forests on his property, and let's say his videos inspired me to try doing this myself. Again, this is a first year, and it will be expanded, much filled in, hopefully over the years. But thought I'd show you its first year. So, first of all, these are some plum trees that I had planted a few years ago. I rarely get any plums because it tends to frost at just the wrong time, but they're pretty. But this year I went ahead and I tried to turn this little oval area in between the trees into an area that will produce some food. In the center of this, by the way, all I did was put down cardboard, a little bit of grass clippings because I didn't have any compost at the time, and then put down the cypress mulch. So this soil here has not been prepared in any way, and the ground here is pretty much clay. So. But in the center of this I planted a raspberry bush, which is starting to fruit for me. This is, by the way, August, I believe, 28th, 2021. So hopefully in the spring this will be spreading, and the idea is to have this spread throughout this area, and I have a little raspberry patch that will come back and hopefully spread each year. I also did stick in the ground, and again just stuck it in the ground, a jalapeno plant, and it's actually doing surprisingly well. It's got some nice sized jalapenos. I then also put in this, I think this is a tropical sunset tomato plant. It was just an extra one that I had left over, and I thought I'd stick it in the ground and see what happened. Again, I probably put some fish emulsion on these at the beginning, but other than that they really had no fertilizer. So the tomato is only doing okay, although it did start out pretty spindly. It had sat in the cell pack far too long. The pepper really kind of surprised me. I did stick in a cucumber over here, but this was pretty late, and again it sat in its cell pack for too long. So I may get some cucumbers because it is starting to come to life. The one experiment that I did was I planted these red noodle beans, which I don't know if these are the same things they call yard-long beans, but I don't think this is a yard, but it's pretty close. It's over 2 feet anyways. But the idea was I just stuck the beans in the ground, and this is not great soil. Again, I think I put some fish emulsion on it sort of after they sprouted and grew a little bit, but the idea was to have them climb both of these, because there's a plant over there, although that one didn't do nearly as well, to climb up these plum trees and then hang down in this sort of umbrella shape, and I thought that would look kind of cool, and it sort of worked. It didn't spread out over the tree as much as I would have liked, but it is kind of a cool effect. And again, next year I'll make sure that the soil is better prepared, and but I like the idea. The rest of these pots in here, this is sort of just my tomato plant retirement home, not quite graveyard because they are still putting out some fruit. But these are just extra tomato plants that I had, started from seed. Didn't need them in the upper garden, my main garden, so I just stick them in pots, and whatever I get, I get. These, by the way, need to be potted, but these are really pretty. They're a 5-color pepper. I think they are supposed to be spicy. I've heard they're not wonderful tasting, that they're more of an ornamental, but they definitely are cool looking. Over here, this is a brand new tree this year. This is a wine sap. It's a dwarf or semi-dwarf. Underneath it, just surrounding it, is one single marigold plant. It's just gone absolutely nuts. This was just a volunteer. But yeah, I sort of left it there. They're sort of protecting the tree, I guess. This is just a tomato. This is a German Johnson variety, which is actually really neat and tastes really good. It's got a beautiful tomato. This was an extra pepper plant. The blight has just taken this completely, so all the leaves, I've taken off all the leaves. I'm just letting the few fruit that are on it. Over here, I did put in a pumpkin. I doubt this is going to produce pumpkins before frost nails it, but we'll see. It was just an extra plant. We'll see what it does. I plan to just let this ramble on down the yard. And here are some strawberry plants in little pots. These were ones that I potted just from runners earlier in the year from the main garden. And the plan is to take these, plant them around the base of the trees. I've done that around some of them. And let those spread, run out, and just get basically a ground cover of strawberries. I also put in this cucumber, which actually is doing pretty well. And I have harvested several cucumbers off this year. It was put in pretty late, and I see some new ones coming. And there's some peppers that I just stuck in the ground. And again, these things were all just put in the ground. There was no tilling of any kind. I put down, I don't know, some grass clippings, maybe some compost, but and then just on top of cardboard. Just smother the grass underneath and just sort of prepare the area, and then put down wood chips. So even this first year, without a lot of additional nutrients to the soil, things have actually done pretty good. Over here, I put in a cucumber late here too. It's not doing particularly well, but it's starting to perk up and flower, we'll see. And a basil that's actually doing pretty good. Some purslane over there, which is a very nutritious weed, high in omega-3 fatty acids. So, here's just an extra tomato plant and another one. They're putting on a few tomatoes, and they're starting to, this one's getting nailed by the blight, but it's resisting it better than the plants I had in my upper garden, which are pretty much just toast at this point. This is another German Johnson, so should get some nice tomatoes from that, and just some extra food. This area is sort of what I consider to be the center of the garden, and I'm just sort of preparing this, put down cardboard and wood chips just to smother the grass, and I'll probably just plant something in this big pot for now, but I'd like to see some kind of a water feature, even if just a bird bath, but maybe with a little fountain or something, and have this sort of nestled, having a little sitting area nestled in between the trees. This is a new apple tree. It's Johnny Appleseed, supposedly a known graft from one of the trees that Johnny Appleseed planted. And underneath that I planted ground cherries. This was something new to me. I learned about these I think a year ago, and so I really wanted to see what they were like. This is related to a tomatillo, and you can see the fruits come in these little, they call like a little Chinese lantern looking thing. You're supposed to wait till they fall on the ground. That's when you know they are ripe, hence the name. And inside this little package is sort of this one looks to be a little bit green, usually a little more yellow fruit. That was actually pretty sweet, a little tartness. It's fairly mild flavor. It's sort of like a mild grape or a mild cherry maybe. They're not as good, I don't think, as strawberries or blueberries, but it's very prolific. I mean, they're all over the ground because I haven't gathered these up for several days. It has rained, which kind of beat this thing down, but this was on its way out. These were 3 plants here, and they were actually sitting around in cells for far too long, like some of my other plants here. They were actually starting to flower when they were just, 6 inches tall. So I stuck them in the ground, hoping that they would revert to their, their growth stage. And they did. They stopped flowering, they kicked in some growth. They actually produced pretty good. These apparently, like tomatillos, if you ever had those in your garden, are supposed to reseed themselves very easily. So a lot of these I'm just going to let, especially ones that were split or something, I'll let sit in the ground and just allow this area to reseed itself. And this area, even though it's an annual plant, it should from now on just come back on its own every year. I probably, if anything, will just have to thin it, and then I may move plants somewhere else. I believe this variety is an Aunt Molly's, but I can't remember. It was either that or a Lowen Brothers. I didn't keep track well enough. This is just a small area with some cardboard, and this is where a blueberry bush is going to be planted here soon. This tree is new this year. It's a Yellow Delicious, a dwarf or semi-dwarf variety. I can't remember which. Underneath I planted earlier in the year I planted some strawberries, which actually produced pretty well. I just recently put in some basil, which is taking off, and I put in a pumpkin, which probably will not produce pumpkins by Halloween, but what the heck. However, this pumpkin here has this massive leaf, and it's actually a very nice sized little carving pumpkin. This plant was a volunteer that was just, must have been in the compost that I put around this tree. This is a cherry tree, by the way, with a basil and a cucumber that I just put in, and a strawberry, which is about to be planted. This is a pepper over here, I'm sorry, and this is basil. But this was just a volunteer that sort of sprouted along the edge of this fence, and I just let it ramble down here. I didn't know what it would be. I didn't know whether the pumpkins we got were, actually a hybrid that might yield like a white pumpkin. It seems like they often will do that. But I just let it go, just for the heck of it, let it sort of ramble down the yard between the different tree cages, and it produces beautiful pumpkin. It needs to be picked, and it's so early. It's a little more than 2 months to Halloween, so I don't know whether it will keep, but still. And really the craziest thing that in this area, it's starting to get pretty dark, so I apologize for the video quality. It's darker than what the video shows. Is this tomato plant. This cage is probably 5 feet in diameter, and this is one single tomato plant in here. It's growing up and around this Johnny Appleseed. In fact, it's just catching up with the top of the tree, and it's just all over the place. It is just covering this entire fence, hanging all over it, and it's actually producing quite a bit of fruit. I've picked quite a few little cherry tomatoes off this already, but yeah, it's just everywhere. See, I was stuck in an extra stake outside. It's rambling all over that. This variety is called a Tommy Toe, and it did well in some other areas of my garden, but nothing like this. So I will be saving seeds from these tomatoes for sure. Again, I did very little, if anything, to the soil. I guess some fish emulsion, and that's probably about it. But it's just wonderful, doing wonderfully here, and it's starting to get some blight on it, but again, it really resisted the blight pretty well down here, so I will definitely be growing tomatoes down here again. Well, again, it's getting pretty dark, and I think I've shown you what I've done so far this year. So you have a very pleasant evening, and I will perhaps see you soon in another video. Okay. Good night.